Daily Words of God. Today, you should be aware of how to be conquered, and of how people conduct themselves after they have been conquered. You may say you have been conquered, but can you obey unto death? You must be able to follow to the very end, regardless of whether there are any prospects. And you must not lose faith in God, regardless of the environment. Ultimately, you must achieve two aspects of testimony: the testimony of Job, obedience unto death, and the testimony of Peter, the supreme love of God. In one respect, you must be like Job. He lost all material possessions and was beset by the pain of the flesh. Yet he did not forsake the name of Jehovah. This was Job's testimony. Peter was able to love God unto death. When he was put on the cross and faced his death, he still loved God. He did not think of his own prospects or pursue beautiful hopes or extravagant thoughts. And he sought only to love God and to obey all of God's arrangements. Such is the standard you must achieve before you can be considered to have borne testimony, before you become someone who has been made perfect after having been conquered. Today, if people truly knew their own substance and status, would they still seek prospects and hopes? What you should know is this: regardless of whether God makes me perfect, I must follow God. Everything He does now is good and done for my sake, and so that our disposition can change and we can rid ourselves of Satan's influence, to allow us to be born in the land of filth and yet rid ourselves of impurity. Shake off the filth and the influence of Satan to leave it behind. Of course, this is what is required of you, but for God it is merely conquest, done so that people have the resolve to obey and can submit to all of God's orchestrations. This way, things will be accomplished. Today, most people have already been conquered, but within them there is still much that is rebellious and disobedient. People's true stature is still too small, and they can only become full of vigor if there are hopes and prospects. Lacking hopes and prospects, they become negative and even think about leaving God. Furthermore, people have no great desire to seek to live out normal humanity. This is unacceptable. Thus, I must still talk of conquest. In fact, perfection occurs at the same time as conquest. As you are conquered, the first effects of being made perfect are also achieved. Where there is a difference between being conquered and being made perfect, it is according to the degree of change in people. Being conquered is the first step of being made perfect, and does not mean that they have been completely made perfect, nor prove that they have been completely gained by God. After people have been conquered, there are some changes in their disposition, but such changes fall far short of those in people who have been completely gained by God. Today, what is done is the initial work of making people perfect, conquering them, and if you cannot achieve being conquered, then you will have no means of being made perfect and being completely gained by God. You will merely gain a few words of chastisement and judgment, but they will be incapable of completely changing your heart. Thus, you will be one of those who are eliminated. It will be no different from looking at a sumptuous feast upon the table, but not eating it. Is that not a tragic scenario for you? And so you must seek changes. Whether it is being conquered or being made perfect, both relate to whether there are changes in you, and whether or not you are obedient. And this determines whether or not you can be gained by God. Know that being conquered and being made perfect are simply based on the extent of change and obedience, as well as on how pure your love of God is. What is required today is that you can be completely made perfect. But in the beginning, you must be conquered. You must have sufficient knowledge of God's chastisement and judgment, must have the faith to follow, and be one who seeks change and seeks knowledge of God. Only then will you be someone who seeks to be made perfect. You should understand that in the course of being made perfect, you will be conquered. And in the course of being conquered, you will be made perfect. Today, you can seek to be made perfect or seek changes in your external humanity and improvements in your caliber. But of principal importance is that you can understand that everything that God does today has meaning and is of benefit. It enables you who are born in a land of filth to escape the filth and shake it off. It enables you to overcome the influence of Satan and leave behind the dark influence of Satan. By focusing on these things, you are protected in this land of filth. Ultimately, what testimony will you be asked to give? You are born in a land of filth, but are able to become holy, never again to be sullied by filth, to live under the domain of Satan, but divest yourself of Satan's influence, to be neither possessed nor harassed by Satan, and to live in the hands of the Almighty. This is the testimony and the proof of victory in the battle with Satan. You are able to forsake Satan. You no longer reveal satanic dispositions in what you live out, but instead live out that which God required that man attain when he created man: normal humanity, normal sense, normal insight, normal resolve to love God, and loyalty to God. Such is the testimony borne by a creature of God. You say, "We are born in a land of filth," but because of God's protection, because of His leadership, and because He has conquered us, we have rid ourselves of the influence of Satan. That we can obey today is also the effect of being conquered by God. And it is not because we are good, or because we naturally love God. It is because God chose us and predestined us that we have been conquered today, are able to bear testimony to Him, and can serve Him. So too, it is because He chose us and protected us that we have been saved and delivered from the domain of Satan, and can leave behind the filth and be purified in the nation of the great red dragon.